All right, today I want to welcome you guys both to the very first episode of Mental. The reason I wanted to create this show is because I myself have recently embarked on a kind of a mental health journey, trying to build some emotional and mental fortitude. And I had a very short list of people that I wanted to include on it because I think that you two have some insight and some stories that would be helpful to the general public of kind of how to overcome adversity and stay positive through that. So I want to welcome Mr. JT to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And then my buddy Jonathan as well here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
So we're kind of going to free flow this, and the hope for this that we all kind of talked about preliminary before this is that some of what our story is about, or some of the things that we're trying to practice to increase our mental strength and mental fortitude, will help somebody else in their journey. And so I kind of want to start it off with I'm going to give a little synopsis about why I have gotten to this place. And then I'd like to hear JT's story and kind of the adversity that you've had to overcome in the last decade and what's kept you going. And then we'll talk with Jonathan about what you've faced and what's kept you going. So the concept I came up with like probably 20 days ago or so is that I've been going through some really difficult times recently, mentally, emotionally, and I tried to find a way to continue to walk through the fire and stay positive. And it was pretty difficult, and I had to have the understanding that the world's going to keep going no matter what I'm doing. And I have responsibilities and tasks that I have to keep up with, but that's just like existing. And so what could I do on a daily basis to take my existence into truly living? And so I had this, I don't know if it was an epiphany or I heard somewhere through osmosis, and then just became a thing in my brain. But one of the things I started doing right away to like combat my depression was clean my space. And so like I wanted to come home every night because I was already just emotionally drained from working. I wanted to come home every night and to a clean space, because when it's clean around you, you feel clean. And my thought behind that was there was times where people have knocked on my door. I live with a 9-year-old boy. So me at 40 and him at 9 is basically like having 6 college guys just live in one house. Like there's darts everywhere. There's things stringing about. It's nothing disgusting, but it's cluttery. And I wanted to pick up that space because I realized that if someone knocked on my door, I'd be embarrassed to let them in at certain times because there's a cluster around the house, right? And so as I cleaned up, I got further and further. So that day 3, I'm like, well, man, the place is pretty clean, but I still have this space time that I need to do something in that is dedicated for this specific task, is cleanliness. And so I wiped down my windows. Dude, it was like 4 paper towels into the front bay windows, and I was like, this needs to be done more often. And then day 4, I'm like, okay, well now that's pretty good. What's next? So I'm dusting fans and lights, and then next thing I'm doing baseboards, and now I've gotten to the point where like I've used products that are used for cleaning that I've never used before to make the tables look shiny, or the leather, moisturizing the leather couches and stuff like that. And so I then took in the concept where part of what I was upset about was my inability to regulate my emotions through different relationships, whether they be romantic relationships, job relationships, friendships. I carry everything with a heavy burden, and I couldn't understand why I was doing that. And so I wanted to take that same process of treat my body, my mind, my spirit like a whole. And so I do something every day physically to improve my body. I do something every day spiritually, like read from the Bible or listen to some songs and try and break down the lyrics that are, that I can maybe understand better, because I'm not great at reading. So I play to my strengths and weaknesses. And then I do something where I read something or I watch something. I've been watching how to start various businesses. Like the other day I watched how to start a t-shirt business. I'll never in my life start a t-shirt business, but I wanted to improve my brain. Like what am I doing every day? I never realized how much time I had in a day until I started living each day with purpose and each day with a thing. And I also didn't realize how much I was flying by the seat of my pants. And so the whole concept behind this is I'm making these improvements every day because I want to be able to, just like my house, at any given moment, welcome someone into my heart, welcome someone into my emotional space, welcome someone into my physical space, and not be embarrassed about it. Because, my heart and my brain are a cluttery space, and I want to clean them out so that I can welcome those people in. And not only me not be embarrassed, but it'd be a safe space. When you walk into my home, when you walk into my heart, when you walk into my mind, I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel at home and comfortable. And so that was the concept behind all of this. And I'm going to include a 365-day challenge where every day on TikTok, I'm going to talk at least a minute about mental health and some lessons I've learned from individuals like you and people along the way, and include some clips from the show. And I think it's important for me to share my story therapeutically. And I think it's more important and can be more productive to learn from individuals who have been through much more than I have, and not only lived to tell about it, but thrived. And so on this short list, you guys were top of the list. And I wanted to start with JT because one of the things that I really love from the moment I met you was I would have never known the adversity you've overcame, because your positive energy is so incredible that it was very welcoming. I mean, we instantly hit it off, and I feel like I'm probably not the only one that happens with. Like, I feel like you're probably never met a stranger, and I was curious to know, have you always been that way, or was it through your story? And if you could kind of start with the synopsis of what I'm talking about here, and the story that the triumph that you had to overcome, and tell us a little bit about how you were able to do that.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of just a lot of in-depth things that happened to me over the past 12 years, actually, from being diagnosed with kidney failure at the age of 20, where I was in school trying to be a successful student, friend, social life, everything like that, brother, son, everything like that. And from going from trying to do well in that to having the health be the priority. Not a lot of young people get diagnosed with something like that at that age. I've had no medical history at the time, but I went from living a standard traditional American life to going to school, getting a job, things like that, to now, well, am I going to die? Facing your mortality. And when you face your mortality at a young age, it really sets you apart, not in an isolating way, but from a perspective way from other people your age. So I spent 4 hours a session 3 times a week on dialysis while trying to do all those things. And as men, we want to be the strong person. We want to be the stoic individual. We don't want to show people that we're struggling. And I mean, I was the exact same way. I never showed people how much pain or how much suffering or how many times I contemplated taking my own life, because I thought that was easier than what I was going through. Because when you're waiting for a transplant, it's not one of those things where you can just ask somebody, hey, you want to give a portion of your life so I can live?
Yeah.
And so, you're either waiting for a deceased donor or a living donor. Those are the only two ways that really somebody can have their life changed. And, kidney disease is the top 10 killer of Americans still today. Kidneys don't cough. So how do you know to check your, the function of your kidneys that do so many vital things for you? But as I was sitting in these dialysis chairs and watching the time pass, with social media was really getting into the forefront, people were posting, hey, I'm graduating college. Hey, I'm getting married. Hey, I'm starting my career. And I compared myself to everybody. And it was really tough because I was like, hey, I grew up with these people. I've known these people for 18 years. We went to school together. We played recess. But I'm sitting here in a chair watching the world pass me by. And so that was tough. And so I had to, and I would always hear people say, hey, I'm praying for you. And so there was a moment where, I would hear that so many times you get numb to the phrase. And so there was one evening where it was a very particularly difficult dialysis session. And, I had, in the most excruciating pain of my entire life going through this. And at the end of the day, I said, God, please help me. God, please help me. God, please help me. And I was listening to music at the time. And the song that was playing was A Day to Remember's Have Faith in Me, which the chorus is, I said, I never let you go and I never will. And it was one of those things where, instantly rebounded faith. I had, I wasn't always this strong individual. It was built from just callousing your mind and going through that process of just pain. And it's only when you look back at those experiences to where you really have the gratitude. And, proud to say on June 24th, 2014, my life was saved by a girl I went to high school with. She saw via social media that I needed this, and her friends and family said, hey, why him? What if your kid needs one? Somebody else can do this. Somebody else can save his life. Somebody else can do this. And she said, hey, this is a God thing, and I felt called to do this. And because of her one decision to do that, I was able to go back to school, and finish and earn my degree at the University of Missouri. While at the university, I was working, to pay for school. I ran into a pharmaceutical rep from a medication that I happened to be taking, on a daily basis. Shared with him a little bit of my experience. That conversation opened up for me to be a patient ambassador for the company, where I spoke on Capitol Hill, speaking not only from a federal but a state level, getting legislation passed for living organ donors, and just talking with other people in my circumstance. And from there, I graduated from Mizzou and ended up working for a company that specialized in diagnostic tests. So, during COVID, I was one of those populations that was at the higher risk for contracting the virus and having maybe a negative effect. But I never let the fear of the exterior indicate or dictate how I took care of myself. And it's from gratitude. My donor, her name is Nikki. And, every day I make the decision to take my medications and enjoy life because of that one decision. And if you live a life with gratitude, that's really what kind of can get you through anything. And, it's like all the actions that I take are because of her. Everything I do is to honor her, and whatever events, people that I help along the way, whether it's through sharing my experience or through my day-to-day job or the people I meet at different events, it's like, that's all through her. I recently got married, and it's like, well, I met my wife because of her. I wouldn't be here. The future family that we have, the kids that we have, are because of her, because of that one decision. So it's one of those things where no matter what I go through, that one decision, like it was throwing a freaking boulder into a pond, that impact. And so having the mental strength and mental health, it's just like your body, like your physical, because you're talking about how your body, your spirit, everything like that. Yeah. Well, mental health it's not a passive thing that you get better at all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You have to work on it. You have to develop it. And you do it by going through challenging experiences, by acknowledging that this circumstance isn't going to last forever. Whether it's with, your separated girlfriend's circumstance, like that's not going to last forever. Mm-hmm. It's a temporary thing. What you're going through now, it's like, what actions can I take that can benefit her, a week from now, 2 months from now, a year from now? And how can I set myself up to be a source of strength and guidance and peace as well? So it's, I think that's a misconception that people have with mental health, because you hear about it all the time. Mental health this, and now it's getting a lot of attention, but it's like, okay, do you want to be mentally unhealthy forever? Or do you want to get stronger? You want to develop it.
It's almost, we got somewhat of a buzzword, but people just throw it out there, but I don't think a lot of people know it where they need.
Right.
Strong.
Exactly.
Well, because it's not treated the same as going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, there's how many things can you find on Google on the first page? Like, I'm trying to develop abs. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's 47,000 workouts that you can do and regiments, and here's what you can eat and that and that. But that's one of the things too about this, like you're saying, how do I become mentally stronger? How do I increase my mental health? Well, there's different snippets and people telling you like, hey, it's time to get your ass off the couch, go accomplish what you need to accomplish. Or there's the other adverse thing where it's gentle and it's like, have you nurtured yourself today? But there's no like, do 3 sets of 10 of gratitude. Like, what am I list 10 things you're gracious for, rest 60 seconds, list 10 more things you're gracious for, rest 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. There isn't that format. And so,
I just gotta to add on to that. I think there's a lot of knowledge out there just floating around about mental health and mental strength and stuff. But I think the key to understand is that knowing knowing the information isn't enough. You actually have to practice it. You have to apply it, and it does. And sometimes it hurts.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's painful, and you just got to do it. And the alternative, if you don't do it, sometimes it's death. Like, especially in your case, like if you wouldn't have been able to overcome your circumstances mentally, you might not have ever gotten a donor. Maybe you wouldn't have lasted that long, and it's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of mental health too, is these past traumas. And I love what you just said about that, because one of the things that I couldn't figure out is, I've done therapy and I've done these things. So I've identified my traumas. I've identified where my abandonment issues come from, right? The root cause of these things, but I was still living with it like a loose skin. Mm-hmm. And so what I realized I was doing is I had identified my traumas. I knew my triggers. I got to the point where I could say, hey, let me think about this for a minute before we discuss it, because it's bringing up some things. So let me process this. But I just recently, in its ongoing process, started to realize, like, okay, now I'm an adult. So now I've identified my traumas. I can't use them as excuses every time I want to be sad. Every time I want to sit on the couch today because I'm having a rough day, I can't do that. A buddy of mine, Reed, who played professional hockey, used to talk about, when we had a discussion about depression one time, he's like, do you think that I could have gotten onto that ice after having a bad day and just skated around, humdrum, and not got my ass kicked? Like that wasn't a possibility.
On the NHL.
And I was like, dang, man, like I never thought about how that, well, at least I had never thought about, like, what's John Elway going through today before he passes this ball? Like
Tom Brady. Tom Brady is very open about some of his mental health issues that he's had in the past.
I don't respect that he wore Ugg boots, but other than that, I think when he went to Tampa and won a Super Bowl, it was kind of like, you can't hate on him anymore. Like, it's not the organization. This guy is a
I think
beast.
If you have that many Super Bowl rings, you can wear whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that part of your story. And one of the things I wanted to highlight about yourself, because probably you two individuals in particular would not toot your own horn, is I've noticed, and part of the reason why I wanted to call you on too, is that you've been doing a lot of running lately and a lot of working out, a lot of stuff of that nature. What is your goal, distance-wise, marathon-wise, you have set for that? Is that part of your mental wellness, or where did that come about?
Yeah, so last year I ran 13 half marathons. And so what I wanted to do is, with my previous job, I should say, is I wanted to do something above and beyond my 9 to 5 and say, hey, I was struggling as a student, as not only someone who was waiting for a transplant, but as a transplant recipient, because your journey doesn't stop. It's not all magic, once you receive a surgery, because there's still medications, insurance, staying healthy. I would get sick a lot. I still get sick a lot easier than other people. And so I was trying to go back to school, and I went from a 0.67 cumulative GPA to a 2.67 cumulative GPA when I returned to Mizzou, because I had a different purpose. I was a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and I had a chip on my shoulder to be better than who I was before.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm not the only one who is going through this experience. How can I help other people who are pursuing higher education, who have gone through this experience, and how can I make their life just a little bit easier? So last year I started an organization called Conquer the Oregon Trail. So it's kind of like a play on the old game, but also like the Oregon Trail is like the Oregon. It's like, it's a journey. I looked at the transplant journey. Yeah. And so it's about pursuing suffering on behalf of others. And if you intentionally put yourself in those circumstances that are challenging, whether it's mentally or physically, it makes other aspects of your life a little bit easier. It's a perspective. And, it's really hard to live in a life of fear if you have more gratitude. And like, gratitude is the theme of just my life. But it's like, there's still brighter days ahead. It's like, what I'm doing now, cool. But what I'm doing 6 months from now, a year from now. So I wanted to do just a half marathon every year. And I raised $2,100 for this girl who went through a very similar experience that I did. Cool. This year, I'm a little bit behind on my training schedule because I got married and got a puppy as well. So,
oh boy, I got my kid.
Different responsibilities. But, I spent 1,464 hours on dialysis. And excuse me, if you put that into days in perspective, that's 61 entire days. I was sitting in a chair. It's like, what can you do with 61 entire days of your life, uninterrupted, to make progress on whatever aspect of your life? So my goal is to ride my bike 1,464 miles cumulatively this year.
Okay.
And so it's just by getting my butt kicked, pursuing suffering, pursuing challenges. I haven't really been posting or advertising it as much, but it's something that, I don't need to have the fanfare about it. It's like, look, this is something that I'm pursuing. This is that hopefully I can get another person a scholarship and, help another person. And so, who knows what next year is going to hold, but for now it's getting into bicycling. But it's also, it's like, hey,
You're follow that up with reading and spelling?
oh no, I can't do that. But it's like, also, it's like these things are help improve my health. They keep me healthy. They keep my body in a good position to keep this transplant lasting as long as possible, and the mental stuff too. Because, I'm 13 days away from a 10-year transplant anniversary. It's like, people overestimate what they can do in a month and underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I'm looking back at this last decade of my life. I'm like, man, I don't really, again, I'm not a horn tutor, but I'm looking back at since my transplant, like all the things that I've accomplished and done and been involved with, and the people that, I've been able to surround myself with just because of one person's act of generosity. It's like, man, how can you not just enjoy life and do that? It's like, man, it's crazy, but I would never wish what I went through, that experience, on anybody, but I'm so glad that I did, because it gives me a little bit of an edge.
Yeah.
And, in the back of my mind, no matter what I'm going through, no matter what adversity, maybe if I'm late on my mortgage or something, it's like, you know what? I went through all of that, and I'm getting hit with this. That's nothing. Or like chemistry, organic chemistry. I'm like, man, I went through 2.5 years of dialysis, and I can't get through this dang 8-week class. It's like, it's kind of one of those gut checks.
It makes things trivial.
Exactly. Yeah. And instead of using it as a crush, using it as, a pivot point.
Right.
Because you can have this web of where your life takes you. It's like, well, if you look at this one point, because it's so much easier to, navigate a story looking back and connecting the dots. You can't really, I don't know what tomorrow's going to hold for me, but, use that as a pivot point. So it's like, and you decide. And that's, again, going back to like the mental health thing. It's like having that mental clarity too, saying like, I went through this. Let's go. I'm not the only person who's done this.
Did it kill you?
No, that's
you woke up
You're closer.
today.
Yeah.
This-
and a lot of that mental fog. I'm sorry. Did you have it?
Yeah, I was wanting to piggyback on what you said about gratitude. This is something I wrote a few months ago on Instagram. Just kind of hit me one day. It says, I said, your disposition is more important than your position in life, and gratitude is the cure for resentment. And I basically exactly what you said goes right along with that. Like, your disposition or mental well-being is way more important than where you're actually at or what you're actually going through. That's your mental strength will hold you in times of turbulence. It's like going through the storm, when you're going through the storm, I mean, how are you going to navigate that if you just give up, like, and then gratitude and not becoming resentful is huge too, because a lot of people go through hard stuff and they just get better, and it kills them. It doesn't physically kill them, but you see them all the time. I mean, I know people that they just go through something hard and then they're depressed all the time. They never get past it.
Never snap out of it.
They never snap out of it, and their life goes, they might have been living on an upward trajectory, and now they're just tanking constantly. So, I mean, we're all going to tank at some point, but having gratitude, I think, is what keeps you from hitting rock bottom.
A lot of points. I mean, you never read a biography or hear a story that is like, I had this idea, now I'm a millionaire. It's like, I lived in my car for 4 months. I did this. My grandfather used to say about the storm thing that I always liked. I'm sure he didn't come up with it, he didn't coin the phrase, but he had a lot of little things. And he always used to say, calm seas don't make a strong sailor.
Right. Yep.
Right. And so I always really like that one. And all this stuff is relative too, right? And like the reason that I wanted to bring two different kind of aspects and earmarks of experiences is that sometimes our mental fortitude is tested by emotional things, right? Sometimes it's physical things, sometimes it's emotional things. And so I kind of wanted to use this point as a segue to talk about maybe some of the anguish and mental things that you want to share about what your story is. And so part of what I wanted to bring you both on here for today was because some of the things we have to overcome are physical, and that affects us emotionally. And some of the things are emotional, and that affects us emotionally, right? And then we got to kind of pull on the physical part too. So, I was hoping that you would share a little bit about what you've been going through over the last really couple years, right? Or that trajectory and what you've done to pull out of it, because I've definitely seen a difference in your positivity in the last few months also. And that's encouraging. Like I said, you two guys are the first people I thought of, like, who could encourage other people. And I think it's cool if you share your story too. Tell us what we're.
Of course. Well, there's really no easy way to put it, but 2023 was the year from hell. I mean, just one thing after another. My son got attacked by a dog, and early on in the year, my ex-wife and I were having some pretty severe marital issues, to the point where we were pondering divorce early on in the year. Well, then we find out she's pregnant. And so, of course, me being the guy that I am and her, whatever, at that point, we're like, no, I mean, I guess that's our answer. We're not getting a divorce because we're having a baby. And my son, recovered fairly quick from the dog attack. And then I had a grandmother pass away. And then we get into July, and my ex, actually it was June, she miscarries, which is pretty hard. I have a lot of people who go through miscarriages. It's kind of a silent, a lot of people don't realize how hard it is, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then she had some major complications from that, almost died actually at one point. I don't want to go into detail, but it was pretty major.
Yeah.
We get through that, and a lot of the marital stuff kind of comes back. I mean, I think we're both hurting at that point, and we decide that, it's time to call it and, try to work on our own mental health and physical health and stuff separately. Well, then I had another grandmother pass away. And so we're going through all that. And then, we start the divorce process. She moves out in November. Well, the same son that got attacked by a dog, does his best Evel Knievel impression and tries to impress a girl and goes off his bike ramp and totally has his epic wreck and ends up in the hospital for like 3 or 4 days, and has concussion and multiple fractures and stuff. And it was just one thing after another. And by the time that she moved out, I was just, and this was early November, I didn't feel like I had anything left. It was just such an emotionally taxing, physically taxing year. I had just been going all year, dealing with all this stuff, dealing with the divorce, dealing with my kid getting injured multiple times, at the same time working and full-time parenting and all this stuff. It was just a lot. And by the end of the year, I thought I was done. I was just looking at everything that happened. Of course, I felt sorry for myself. And there was quite a few days, especially November and December, where it was a battle just to get out of bed in the morning, just to go and get a cup of coffee in the morning. It took like almost everything I had just to want to get out of bed and function. And there were some days where I would lay in bed and I would just be like, I don't know if I can do this. And I remember being there and just, like I said, feeling sorry for myself and just being really depressed. And then one day I just had this epiphany. I was like, you know what? I'm laying here in bed, and the rest of the world, it's moving. It's still, like, regardless of whether I give up or whether I choose to overcome this, the world's going to go on. And I'll just be remembered at this point as the guy who gave up. And that kind of it clicked for me. I was just like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy who gave up on, well, and also for my kids. Like, I don't want them.
3 sons watching you.
Yeah, I have three boys, 3 beautiful boys, Isaac, Henry, and Seth. They're currently 12, 7, and 3. And what kind of example would I be for them? And they're all going through it too. I mean, it's not easy for kids when their parents are getting a divorce it's a whole new way of life for them. They're used to, when we have this big, beautiful house up in the St. Charles area. And, now they're going from having all this room and all this space to mom living separate and knowing that I'm going to be moving out of that place too. We actually just sold it to just a whole different way of life for them. And it was a huge adjustment. What kind of example am I going to be for them? How am I going to show them how to overcome? Because I'm their father. If I give up, why shouldn't they give up? What kind of example am I going to set if I just sit there and lay there and feel sorry for myself? And I remember it just clicked one day and I was like, nope, I'm not going to be that guy. And much like you were talking about, where it's just like, okay, I'm just going to do one thing around the house today.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I started doing. I'm going to clean this today in the house, or I'm going to do this one business thing. I'm going to reach out to this old contact. Even if it was just one thing, just putting one foot in front of the other. And it's crazy how when you just decide this is not going to beat me. This is not something I'm going to fall prey to. I'm not bigger than it, but I know that I have the strength inside of me to overcome this. And when you just make that decision, it changes everything, And I'm sure that there was moments for you, JT, where as you're sitting there in that dialysis chair, we probably had the similar conversation with yourself, because people always say, giving up isn't an option or suicide isn't an option. Well, it actually is always an option if you choose to make it an option.
Right.
And that's the thing. That's always like, I've always heard people say that. No, suicide's not an option. Well, I have a brother that killed himself. It definitely is an option if you really want to go there. But you have to choose not to go there. You have to choose life. You have to choose, and if you're going to be alive, why not participate in what's going on around you? And then beyond that, if you're sitting there like I was, and you're just feeling sorry for yourself, well, if you really think about it, there's people all over the world that have it infinitely worse than any of us, especially here in the United States, have it. There's people starving. There's children who don't have parents. There's people who, you just look at what's going on in Ukraine and Israel right now. I mean, it's just insane. And for me to sit there, and just wallow in self-pity, it got to where it was almost like a joke for me. Like, I just like, why? I mean, yeah, this is hard. And it was hard, but it could be infinitely worse. And when you have that perspective, I think it just makes everything, I don't want to say worth it, but it gives you a little bit of motivation. And sometimes that's what you need, is just a little motivation. And you got to think your way through that. And like we hit on earlier, like knowing I've sat under some great personal motivation coaches, and some of them you guys have heard of. Just what I do for work, I get to work with a lot of people that are just really good at what they do. And so I had the knowledge. But like I said earlier, having the knowledge isn't enough. You have to take action. And if you're not taking action, well, it's just like your physical body. If you just sit on the couch all day, you're gonna get fat, and your muscles aren't gonna degrade and all that stuff. It's like,
that's crazy, because as you said that, I pictured it as a like, what your emotion is your thing.
Yeah.
And no one can see your emotion. Right. But your physicality is something else. And so when you're saying that, the thing I pictured in my head about that, like analogy wise, is I have a lot of weights at my house.
Mm-hmm.
There was a long time that I just sat there and looked at those weights, and I wasn't using them. And so that's kind of what I think of, like when you talk about that emotionally, it's like I have this emotional knowledge, but I'm not applying it.
Yeah.
It's just sitting there.
There's a guy I used to follow. His name is Brian Clemmer, and he unfortunately passed away. I think it was 2013 or 2014, but he was an author. And he has a book, and it's called "If How-Tos Were Enough, We'd All Be Skinny, Rich, and Happy." It was a good book. I recommend that book, actually. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he actually was one of those authors that was really key for me, especially in the journey that I was just in. And I would say him and there's a lot of things that Jordan Peterson writes that I really like, but the 12 Rules for Life, I read that during that time, and it was very timely for me. But again, knowing the information isn't enough. You have to do something. And even with, like you said, you're training for marathons and I don't, are you going to do the biking competitively?
Nope.
It's all casual. Well, either way, it takes mental discipline to do the physical. Like, it starts here. It starts in your mind. And like, if you can't get yourself off the couch, you're not going to get on your bike. And if you can't get on your bike, you're not going to reach your goal. And if you don't reach your goal, you're going to get depressed. You know, like, I'm not saying you would, but I'm saying that's kind of how the course goes for a lot of us. You know, you know you want to do something, but you don't do it. And then you start getting down on yourself, and that leads to anxiety, depression, all the bad things that you don't want. And then if you're depressed, what use are you to anybody else if you can't get yourself off the couch or out of the bed or whatever it is?
That's so poignant that you said that, because that's exactly what I've tried to start breaking down, and I'd be remiss to say that I've got that part figured out. That's a daily thing, but it's the little BSs that you tell yourself that increase your depression and decrease your motivation, right?
Absolutely.
I can lie to myself and no one will ever know, right? And then once you figure out, though, that like, why am I in a perpetual state of depression? It's because I told myself yesterday that I was going to get up and I was going to wipe down that counter.
Mm-hmm.
I told myself yesterday that I was going to do 10 push-ups this morning. And it doesn't hit you, because when you get home, or at least in my experience, I have to be careful about that. I don't want to paint with this broad brush. In my experience, I could get home after work and I could excuse not having that done because I was tired. But then when I woke up the next day, my subconscious was like, dude, you're a piece of shit. Like, this is the third day in a row that you've told yourself you're going to do this and you haven't done it.
Or what's wrong with you? Why can't you just do this basic thing? Like, you start getting that negative self-talk going, and it builds, you know? It totally builds.
That's the self-love part. Yeah. I used to get so upset because my mother, who I had a pretty tumultuous relationship with, she recently passed as well. And I remember being down there, and my little sister, and she was trying to do something, I think it was ride a scooter. And my mother is like, how dumb are you? Because she couldn't figure this out. And I thought, man, what a terrible way to speak to someone you love.
Right.
And that was part of my realization over the last 20 days too, is inner love. Like, it's so cliche, it's such a buzzword. Like, you can't love anybody until you love yourself. But man, I would never treat someone I unconditionally loved the way I've been treating myself periodically over the last 4 years. I would never tell someone I love, you're useless.
Right.
I would never tell someone I love, you're a liar. I would never tell someone I love unconditionally that you're not smart enough to do this.
Right.
But I was telling myself that all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I've done the same thing. You know, I'm a very much a perfectionist with certain things, and I have expectations for myself. And there's been a lot of times, a lot of years where I've spent like not meeting my own expectations, and I'll just beat myself up. Stupid, you know, I'm an idiot, or I'm just lazy, or whatever it is. And it's amazing how that compounds over time. When you don't give yourself the love that only you can give yourself, it compounds over time.
It gets tangled up just the same way it does a relationship. By the time that relationship's over, you know what things are next in a life. So many little things. It's like, where do I even start pulling this yarn apart?
Right.
The same thing builds up in your body.
When I dealt with that, you know, through the divorce, and actually that's one thing I wanted to hit on as I was thinking about this driving in today, was, you know, it's kind of like you go through the 7 stages of grief or whatever it is. And coming out of the divorce, you know, obviously I was angry. I had a lot of anger towards my ex, and you know, I'd be like, well, she always did this and she always did that and blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, almost like I had to take the cameras and point them back at myself and start looking at myself, because I knew there was things that I did wrong. You know, it's 50-50, man, in a relationship. I knew there was things I had to work on. And when I started really looking at myself instead of just blaming her for everything, that's when I really got a lot of progress. And it hurt, man. It hurts to look at yourself and say, you know what? You screwed up.
Yeah.
You did this wrong and you did that wrong. And instead of being like, oh, you're an idiot or you're stupid, I was like, what are you going to do to fix it?
Mm-hmm.
What actions are you going to take so that this never happens again? Because it's easy to stay in the same stupid mentality all the time, where it's just like, well, you know, it would have worked out if so-and-so didn't do this or so-and-so didn't do that. But in reality, it's really, you're just making an excuse for your own failure, you know? And so when you can stop making excuses for failure, because we all fail, and start looking at those failures as lessons, first of all, and opportunities for growth, I think it just totally changes how you approach things in life. At least in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have that unconditional love that we all get from God, right? But I feel like no matter what we're doing, how we're messing up, he's still there. Like, that's pretty cool. That was where I found a lot of solace, and that's why I try to work on my spiritual lately too, is because of that knowledge. And it's like, I love my sons unconditionally. Why wouldn't I love myself unconditionally? I'm the most important person in my life.
You know, the Bible even says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And the key there is, you can't love your neighbor without loving yourself. If you
I'd
really
have a
love
bunch of dead neighbors if I had practiced that during this entire time. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, kind of adding to that point is, it's really easy to have a negative self-talk. You're the easiest person to lie to, all that stuff. But it's like, well, you're kind of going back to flipping the perspective. Well, shouldn't it be just as easy to talk yourself into a positive direction? Because like your thoughts kind of propel your direction and are the start of, or the catalyst of action. Just taking that one step, like you said, was just getting out of bed. It's like, well, objects in motion stay in motion. Objects at rest stay at rest. And, having these high expectations of ourselves, well, sometimes all the expectation you need is to get out of bed. If you do that, hey, it's a task done, task completed. You're talking about kind of cleaning your house. Well, it's like a task done, task completed. You can, no matter what kind of day you have from the external, outside of that house, you can go back, kind of like the clean your room with Jordan Peterson. It's like, no matter what kind of day you have, you can always come back and say, this is a place of peace, a place of, to be proud of too. Because it's like, man, there's a lot of external factors that can really dictate how you feel. But at the end of the day, it's like, why would you let that happen? It's like, why am I letting this external factor causing me to behave or think this way? Where it's like, I'm capable. You kind of think about the things that, as a father, I'm not a father yet. I'm recently married, but it's like, I take some accountability too. Yeah. And you being an example and having your son see that, and, no matter whether you know it or not, people are watching you.
Yeah.
And
especially with social media.
Exactly. Yeah.
I learned that. I actually got to get real careful with the stuff I was posting because as you're processing things, you get these epiphanies, post things.
And you get emotional things where you're not using I over E.
So I started using notes instead of Facebook.
I did too. I have an incredible journey on my notes that I would never publish.
Right.
Yeah. We'll put you on a
Maybe
list.
someday polished and taking out certain things, I would post some of it. But like a lot of it was for me. And I'm sure you probably feel that way too. Like, when you're processing things, there's a lot of, you call them epiphanies or whatever, realizations, that it's not for everybody, at least not right now.
No,
it's for you. And, or maybe a few people within your circle that are either going through the journey with you or, however it looks, there's a lot of things that shouldn't go on social media. And that's where, at the same time, you want people to see that what you're going through isn't killing you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need that. I do believe there's such a thing as toxic positivity. And, it's not,
personality. It's the same people at who's your carry? Who's your cell phone? Remember those in the mall?
Yeah.
The kiosk personality was something that I always like, that's toxic positivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, toxic positivity is not acknowledging the truth, and it's okay to acknowledge the truth, but you don't have to pretend like nothing's happening. Like, if you're going through something hard, just acknowledge it. It's hard. Cool. All right. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this?
Yeah.
It's not, I'm just going to turn a blind eye to what's happening and pretend like everything's okay when it's not, and you're dying inside. Like it's acknowledging what's happening around you, but it's also not letting it defeat you. And a lot of times I think of, I'm not as much as I used to be, but I'm a big World War II nut, used to be. And studying some of these soldiers and stuff, like you see the mental battles, or even I just watched Saving Private Ryan. Like the whole thing is like, he is going through a mental battle this entire time to find Private Ryan. And you kind of see that, you start realizing he's doing all this stuff and he doesn't know how he's going to get through the next day or the next hour, but they just push through, and that's strength. And, in a way, we're not, I don't want to compare myself to any of those brave men and women. at all. But using them as an example or looking at their example, I think is extremely valuable because they're not called the greatest generation for no reason.
Yeah, man, they're pretty nuts. Wow. Thank you. What a first episode.
Yeah.
That was cool. I didn't expect to take away as much as I did. And I'm excited to rewatch this and just really listen over and over again. But thank you both so very much for sharing your stories and your vulnerabilities. And I'm taking a lot away from today from both of you guys.
Same.
So,
Yeah, thank you guys.
Absolutely.